Man, we're going to be in the red zone tonight. Oh, boy. I already know it. We're going to be in the red zone tonight. Tonight's the night. We jumping in the red zone. Got people in the comment section already going at it. Going back and not going at it. I'm just playing. But just giving their perspective. I forgot that when you like put on YouTube, you're going to start a video, people can comment already. All right. We're going to have an interesting time tonight. Let's go in. First things first. Welcome to CNN. CNN. I'm your host, Kirk Kennedy. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. All right. This verse is going to come up again, I think, later on. You'll see. It'll be interesting. All right. So, obviously, I'm scrolling through YouTube, and I see this question. Should you attend a gay wedding? And I always I make sure to look at the dates of things, right? Because I'm thinking, oh, people really talking about this right now or not? So apparently this is a new conversation, and it's largely due to a theologian pastor named Allistair Begg out of Cleveland, Ohio, who leads a semi-influential church. I think he has, I've heard of him before. I've read some of his stuff. He has a pretty decent sized ministry, all right? So I was just scrolling through YouTube, and I saw that Alan Parr from The Beat, monster. I don't know the dude personally. I don't listen to a lot of his stuff. But the stuff that I have seen, I feel like I would agree with him. I feel like he's on point. But he has 1.16 million followers on YouTube. So he has a title of one of his shows called "Another Mega Church Pastor Affirms Gay Marriage." Okay, that's how it reads. Now I don't know what you think when you hear that, but let me just say what I think when I hear that. He's saying another pastor of a large church is saying gay marriage is okay, is agreeing with that, all right? That would go against the historical and most biblical position of the church and what the Bible actually says, but we're going to get into that, right? So, Alan Parr, respectable dude, big YouTube channel, so I thought, let me click on this channel. And as I watched it, he basically takes 2 clips from Allistair Begg, and plays them, and then gives 5 reasons why Christians should not attend a gay wedding, all right? I want to watch some of this video. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but I want to watch some of this with you because I have some problems with the video. I have some problems. Stay with me, because I have some problems with the video. I have some problems with what he's saying in the video. And so we're going to go there and look at what he's saying and then see if what I'm saying is right, all right? I could be wrong. But I have some problems with the way this video is presented. And I don't know, this is no smite against his character. I don't know this brother. I am not going like that. He seems like a solid dude, serves in his church, I think. I don't know him that well. But I have some problems with the way the video is presented. All right, so let's go to the tape. Let's go to the tape, and we will see what I'm talking about. Should you attend a gay wedding? Here is Alan Parr giving his perspective, mega YouTube channel, and I have some problems with what he's saying. Stay with me, because if you leave early, you're going to think I'm saying something I'm not. Stay with me, but I have some problems with this. Let's watch this together right now.
Clips that I want to share with you, not 1, but 2 clips that I want to share with you. And with that out of the way, I'm going to share this first clip where he basically affirms gay marriage. Take a listen.
And in very specific areas this comes across. I mean, you and I know that we field questions all the time that go along the lines of, my grandson is about to be married to a transgender person, and I don't know what to do about this, and I'm calling to ask you to tell me what to do, which is a huge responsibility. And in a conversation like that just a few days ago, and people may not like this answer, but I asked the grandmother, does your grandson understand your belief in Jesus? Yes. Does your grandson understand that your belief in Jesus makes it such that you can't countenance in any affirming way the choices that he has made in life? Yes. I said, well then, okay, as long as he knows that, then I suggest that you do go to the ceremony, and I suggest that you buy them a gift. Oh, she said, what?
Okay, so let's recap what we just heard. Essentially, Pastor Begg is in conversation with a lady who maybe called into his radio program or whatnot. She's a grandmother. She has a transgender grandson, and she is wondering whether she should attend this wedding ceremony. And Allistair Begg says, hey, yeah, you know what? He asked her a few questions. Does your grandson know that you believe this, believe that? She says, yes. He says, well, if that's the case, then go ahead and attend the wedding. And while you're there, you might as well just buy them a gift as well. My brothers and sisters, I'm going to say this as lovingly and as gently, but as firmly as I can. There is no scenario that exists that any Christian should ever attend a gay wedding under any circumstances, no matter what. It doesn't matter whether it's your grandson. It doesn't matter whether it is your own child whom you love. There is no scenario that exists. It does not matter. Biblically speaking, a Christian should never attend a wedding from a gay couple. And I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you should never do that.
All right. Okay. So let's go. Let's start here. All right. Let me tell you the first problem I have with what he's saying here. And it's not kind of what he said, but it's the way the video is presented. All right. You just heard the audio. He's going to play 2 audio clips. And the second one is not saying anything first. But like I said from the beginning of this video, when you hear a mega church pastor, another, so it's saying another one. So, and normally, so it's giving context. Other people are affirming gay marriage. You and I are logically going to think whoever he's talking about is pro-gay in their theology, pro-gay homosexual union, right? That's what we're going to think. Here's the problem. When you just heard the clip that Allistair Begg, the pastor that he's talking about, the megachurch pastor, he answers the question to the woman who says, I have a transgendered grandson and he wants me to go to his wedding. What should I do? And he says, I'm paraphrasing, which Alan Parr just did, does your grandson know, basically, you do not approve of this? That your Christian conviction does not allow for you to participate in this thing at all, right? And she said, yes. Then he said, all right, you should go to the wedding and buy a gift. Now, I personally think he's tripping about buying a gift, right? But that's not the point I want to talk about. When you set up a video, and I get it, I do YouTube, I get it, I'm not on the scale, I don't give the time to it that he does, and we're looking for clickbait, but here's my concern. I don't know Alan Parr's character, it seems like a solid dude. But when you have a video affirms gay marriage, but then the clip that you play is the guy saying to the woman, well, does he know that your conviction does not allow you to support this and any countenance or whatever? Yes. Okay, then you can go. So he starts off his answer by saying that almost affirming the Bible does not affirm gay marriage. He's not saying the Bible affirms gay marriage. He's talking to a woman who's trying to process, should she go? And now whether you agree or disagree is not my point. That's not the point I'm trying to make. My point is, man, this title to me comes off as a bit slanderous. Because I haven't heard in the 2 clips that he played from Allistair Begg, I don't hear him say, I affirm gay, I'm pro-gay. I think the Bible does not, because when you hear affirms gay marriage, you think the Bible does not condemn it. That's not what he said. What he said was, does your grandson know that you cannot approve of this? Okay, once he knows that, then you can go. And I think there's a reason why he said that. So from the jump, I have a problem with that. We'll get to the statement, no Christian should ever attend a gay marriage ever. You know, we'll get to that in a second. But let's keep going with this.
But once again, stay with me because I have another clip that I want to share with you in just a moment. The first and obvious reason is that it's not a wedding, right? I mean, what are we actually celebrating? God specifically said that a marriage is between a man and a woman. And the society in which we live is trying to do their best. The enemy's trying to do his best to try to redefine what God calls a marriage. And so if God does not put his stamp of approval and God does not even recognize whatever is happening at this ceremony as being a valid marriage or wedding, then who are we to go and celebrate something that God has clearly not even sanctioned on his own? So the next time you consider going to one, ask yourself, what am I actually celebrating here? Because it's not a wedding. It's not a marriage. The second reason why we should not attend is because in attending, we are actually affirming. Now, I'm sure all of us have been to weddings before where the priest or the pastor stands up and says, hey, Do you all here commit to supporting, loving, and even praying for the well-being of this couple? Do you accept the responsibility to come alongside this couple and help them in their years of marriage and be a support system for them and be a source of encouragement and accountability for this particular couple, of which we all would say yes? Now, you might attend a
Now, let me say this real quick. As a pastor who has done many weddings, I've never said this at a wedding, just to be clear. Now, it may not be neither here nor there. I've never said this at a wedding. I've been to a few weddings where this is spoken of. Do you all? But let's just be honest, right? We mostly go to weddings because we were invited, right? And sometimes we go selfishly because we want a free meal. We don't bring no gift. We don't bring nothing, right? We go to weddings because we were invited. We want to eat. We want to dress up. If we're single, there may be other singles there that we can get to know. Weddings are a good place to meet other people, right? I'm a pastor. I've done, I don't know how many weddings I've done in my 15 plus years of being a pastor. I don't talk like that. And I don't go to weddings thinking I'm going to rally around them and pray for them and do all of this. You go to weddings largely because you were invited, and then two, to have a little fun and all that type of stuff. So even the logic of what he's saying, I think is like it's building a case that I don't think that's what the grandmother was trying to suggest, nor do I think that's what Allistair Begg was trying to communicate. He made it clear, does he know that you do not bang with gay, like you can't support it. But when you hear the language, it's almost like, whoa, what if the wedding doesn't say that? Does that change anything or not? Because I don't know how many weddings with the pastors, like, does everyone rally around and affirm? But that's not the biggest issue to me. We haven't even touched what I think the main concern is. And so let's get back to this and let's touch what I believe to be the main concern for me of what he's saying in this video. All right, here we go.
And a wedding that's between a man and a woman that you don't agree with and you don't think they should be married, that's all the more reason why we as a community should come alongside them, because there's nothing sinful for a man to marry another woman, right? So they need our prayers. They need our encouragement. They need our support. They need our accountability. But when you go to a wedding, I keep putting in air quotes, of a gay couple, what you are basically saying is that I am committing to praying for the health and the well-being of this couple. I pray that they make it. I want to come.
Really though? Like, I get what he's saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm not disagreeing with his larger premise, but really though, like, do you actually think that when you go to a wedding? Or is that what you do? I mean, let's be honest. How many people's weddings, marriages have you prayed for after you went? Man, stop lying. You went, got you something to drink, got you something to eat, left, took your dress back, did some selfies because you thought you was cute, all that. Are you really that invested in every wedding you go to? Now, I'm saying this for a point. Don't get me wrong. I'm not You're going to see in a minute what I'm saying. This is point because he's painting a narrative of what you're saying if you go to a wedding of people that are gay. Or is that really what everyone is thinking when they go?
Come alongside and support them. I affirm them, and I am going to be their accountability system or a support system.
You don't even know the people that well to be their accountability, right? You're not thinking. You're not thinking that way. But the narrative that's being presented, of course, here so far. This is point 2. Here so far, there's no biblical logic yet. There's no logic. It's all. It's assumptive, right? It's assumptive logic. I'm assuming that there's no biblical logic. And I think for a guy of his stature, you got to get biblical logic out the gate, man. When you say a pastor, which I think wrongly, I think is borderline slandering this dude, saying that he's affirming gay marriage in the way that we would understand that term to be, I think that's pretty dangerous. You got to be careful, bro, because you wouldn't want someone to say that about you if that wasn't your position, right? He qualifies something later, but I don't think the qualification is more important than the presentation of this. But let's keep going. Maybe I'm wrong.
System for this couple so that they can make it, so they can thrive and have a healthy relationship. Now, my brothers and sisters, are you comfortable as a Christian praying for a couple when you know, and I'm going to keep it PG, when you know that right after that ceremony, they're going to go into the hotel room and do something, a man with a man and a woman with a woman, to do stuff that only a man and a woman should be doing with each other? Are you comfortable as a Christian promoting that, affirming that, and praying that they have a healthy marriage? Rethink that next time you consider going to a gay wedding. The third
All right. So are you comfortable affirming and promoting that? Nah. we're not comfortable affirming and promoting that, right? We're not comfortable. We're not comfortable affirming and promoting people who have children out of wedlock. But I'm going to go to a baby shower, even though this woman has sex and it wasn't in the way God intended. I'm going to go to the baby shower and bring a gift, right? No, but are you really promoting and affirming all of that just because you attend a wedding? I just think like, maybe you are, but this gets to my deeper point. All right, let me explain real quick a couple things, and we're going to come back to the video. Problems that I have with this video and the whole logic of it, right? Because he's saying if you go to a gay wedding or trans, whatever, you are one-to-one affirming, promoting, and all of that, right? And and again, it's largely talking about the people that would see you. You're affirming, promoting, and so here's the question that I have: are you always affirming things that you choose to attend, right? So let me give you just an example, but I want to give you some biblical criteria to consider, right? Because a lot of his logic is largely making an assumption about how you're perceived and then how you're going to be judged by God. And I think this is very dangerous. We have to be careful. And I'm going to give biblical logic. He's a sharp dude, but I was surprised at the lack of biblical logic. But let me start with just an example for a second, and then let's get to some biblical logic. If you work a job, which many of you watching live or later do, and your job promotes Gay Pride Month, right? And they want you to wear a button or go to some luncheon. Say they're going to have some luncheon and they're going to honor, and it's mandatory. It's a mandatory luncheon. They're going to honor people who are LGBTQ community, all that, right? Do you say, well, I can't support because of this month, I'm quitting my job? Now, undoubtedly, some people will do that. Some people will quit their job, right? I get it. But many of you are not going to quit your job. That's not a flag that that's not a hill you're going to die on. All right, so they promote gay. I don't have to I'm going to the luncheon but I'm not going there in support of it. Like I'm not going to, if you don't support it, you don't support it. You're not going to, just because they have these agenda items and sensitivity training and all that stuff, it doesn't mean that by doing those things, you one-to-one support that, right? Not a one-to-one. I'm not saying you can't support it. I'm making a point against the logic that says if you attend, you support. But I think there are a lot of situations that we could attend that we really don't support. We don't support this thing, but we're attending it for other reasons, all right? So that's just an example, but let me give you some biblical criteria of why I have a problem with so far what he said. One, it's possible to be righteous in the midst of unrighteousness, right? It is possible to be righteous in the midst of unrighteousness. It's possible to be righteous in a gay wedding around unrighteousness. Let me explain what I mean. So when we get to 2 Peter 2, 2 Peter refers back to Genesis 18 and 19. And he says, we're going to look at 3 verses of what Peter says in 2 Peter 2. Here's what he says. He says, and if he rescued Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked, right? For as that righteous man lived among them day after day, he was tormenting his soul over their lawless deeds that he saw and heard. Then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to keep the unrighteous under punishment to the day of judgment. Now, the context he's saying is that people who sin are going to be judged, and God can separate those who are righteous and those who are not, right? He has the ability to sustain the righteous person and all of that. Now, here's the question I want to ask you, right? We know that in Genesis, when the angels came to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, they told Lot to leave the city. They told him to go to Zoar, right? Go to Zoar. Go to the hills, and they said to go to Zoar. So we know at the least, there was another town close to them. Now, we don't know anything about that town, what they were doing. But here's a question that I have. Why is Lot staying in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? When it says this, he was tormenting his righteous soul over their lawless deeds that he saw and heard. Why didn't Lot just leave? Why did he choose to stay there when his soul was being tormented, right? They were lawless deeds that he saw and heard. All right? Don't hear what I'm not saying. What I'm saying is I'm trying to answer the question, why is Lot able to be there? Why does he choose to be there? Why doesn't he leave? Because this is a crazy place. You know, because sometimes we have to be righteous around the unrighteous. We have to be. It's possible for you to be righteous in an unrighteous situation. Sometimes that's what we have to do. We don't always have the luxury. Now, again, a wedding is a choice, but Lot's, where he lived was a choice. I'm not making it a one-to-one because he did this. What I'm saying is Lot could have chosen, hey, these people are wilding in this city. I'm leaving. I'm going somewhere else. We have from my understanding, exegetical reason to believe that he should have stayed. They were wilding. And yet he decided, I'm staying here instead of going to Zoar. And he was tormented. It is possible that we're going to choose to be, if you're a Christian, you're going to largely live in a situation, you're going to work in a situation where the majority of people around you are unrighteous and you're trying to honor the Lord. You're trying to honor the Lord, and the Lord sees that. He knows that. It is possible to be righteous in the midst of unrighteousness. Now, I'm going to make another statement here that's connected to this that he says later on in the video, and I'm not sure if we're going to get there. But he makes this point. I think he said at the end of this, how can you affirm, we're supposed to take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, right? Expose them. He says, are you exposing the darkness when you attend a wedding? I think that's actually the next point. So let's go there and see if that's it, if I'm right. I think this is the next point he says right here.
Third reason that you should never attend a gay wedding is because it goes against scripture. The Bible is very, very clear that we should not participate in sin. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 11, it says this, take no part in the worthless deeds of evil and darkness. Instead, expose them. Notice it says, take no part. Do not be a part of it. Don't be associated with it. Don't attend it. But he also goes on and says something else. Instead of just not doing it, it says we should be on the affirmative to expose these things. So you ask me this question, to answer me this question, by going to a gay wedding, once again, are you exposing the worthless deeds of darkness, or are you affirming? Are you going along with it, right? So we have enough Christians that are going along with this, what's going on in the world. We need Christians who are going to be bold enough to stand up and expose the worthless deeds of darkness.
All right, so this is interesting, right? Let's go to this. Let's go to this question now. Let's go here. Actually, let's go back to me. All right. So here's the interesting point about what he's saying. So I don't disagree with him. I agree in premise with what he's saying, but it's the nuances that matter, right? And I'm sorry I didn't put the video when you were looking at my face when you heard it. All right. It's the nuances that matter. So here's his question. Are you exposing the deeds of darkness if you're at a gay wedding, or are you participating? Are you affirming it? So remember Allistair Begg's question to the grandmother. Does he know that you do not agree with this? That your conviction as a Christian does not allow you to support him being married? She said yes. And he said, then you can go to the wedding and buy a gift. Now, again, buying the gift, he's wilding. But here's the point. So to answer Alan Parr's question, are you exposing? If you're there only for your grandson, right? And he knows you do not agree. You're a believer and you do not agree. Do you know that every time he looks at you during the ceremony, whatever he's doing, he is reminded of righteousness. He is reminded that you do not agree with this and that you're only there because you loved him, right? This does not, I'm not saying you should go. I largely agree with Allen Parr, but these nuances I have a problem with because we make categorical statements that bind people's consciences that I think are dangerous. If that person knows, you know I do not approve, I think this is sin, but because I love you, I will show up just for that purpose, right? Even though he said no Christian should never do that, if that's your position, that's fine. I'm saying there's nuance. If you know that I don't agree with this, then every time you see my face, you know that this person disagrees with and thinks it's sinful. So you are exposing the deeds of darkness to the person that knows you do not agree. That's a huge statement. And and that person is going to tell their spouse, whoever they're marrying, right? So you're going to tell your significant other, and there's probably other people in the room that know that you're the one person there that does not agree, and you're there. You are exposing the deeds of darkness just by being there. So I think that you got to be careful, Alan Parr. You a sharp dude. You seem like but you saying stuff that's kind of wild. It's not. It's a little bit more complicated than that, right? So now let's get more biblical. Let's get biblical. Here's the second reason why I think it's dangerous to say that attending is approval and celebrating and promoting it. Here's what I actually think his perspective is more rooted in fear of man than than you going there being a measure of fear of man. Let me explain why. Here's the second point I want to make. Because God judges the heart more than the actions, right? This is an idea that's littered in the Bible, right? So let's go here. 1 Samuel 16. When they came, this is after Samuel is told to anoint a king for Israel because they're saying they want a king. And it says, when they came, he looked on Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. All right? So here the Lord looks at the heart of people and judges based on the heart, right? Jeremiah 20:12. O Lord of hosts, who test the righteous, who sees the heart and the mind, let me see your vengeance upon them, for you have committed my cause, right? Here's another verse, Psalm 44. Would not God discover this? For he knows the secrets of the heart. So again, God is going to judge us based on the intentions of the heart, not just the outward actions. Not just the outward. And I'm going to prove this again in a second. That's how he's going to judge us. He's going to judge whether or not you did this based on your love or not. So attending something doesn't necessarily approve or affirm or deny it. Let me read two more verses and I'll say why. So here's Jesus saying this after he heals the paralytic in Mark 2. Why does this man speak like that? He is blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? And immediately Jesus, perceiving in his spirit that thus they questioned within themselves, said to him, why do you question these things in your heart? So here Jesus knows what's in their heart, knows what they're thinking, and asks them a question. Here's the problem, I think, with Allen Parr's perspective on attending is approval and you're not exposing the deeds of the dark. I think there's a problem with that. Again, I agree with this premise. I agree largely with the premise. And I think in 99.99% of situations, you should not attend. But I do not agree with every single situation. There's never a situation where you could attend because attending doesn't, because his logic is attending is approval. I think it's not. And then attending is approval affirmed by who? Other people, but it's God who judges the heart. Let me prove this again. I'm not going to bring the verse up, but think about this. God tells Samuel that David is a man after his own heart and to anoint David the king. He says this at the before David's the king. And when David's the king, David commits adultery with sex with Bathsheba and then has her husband Uriah killed, right? And David, it's the same. So God told Samuel, David's a man after my own heart. But then David does crazy sins. Do you know that there are people who are in hell right now who never committed adultery and never had someone else killed, never had someone else murdered? So how could God look at David, know that David's going to do this, and then say, oh, he's a man after my own heart? We wouldn't say that. You and I would not say, imagine saying, hey, you heard that pastor was committing adultery and lying and deceiving people in his church. You wouldn't say, yeah, but he's a man after God's own heart. You would not say that. You know why? And I'm not saying you should. Don't get me wrong. But God is the one who judges the heart more than the actions. He can look past, he knew what David was going to do. And I'm going to have a video on this point about David because there's a huge thing about this video that I'm going to do tomorrow. But my point is God judges the outward. This the actions of the person. Allen Parr is talking about how it would appear outwardly. You can't think like that. You cannot think like when you stand before God. And let me give you another example. Let's just say if you're married, say you're married and you tell your spouse, I love you, but you never spend any time with them. You're always angry. You're not intimate with them. You avoid them at all costs. Technically, you are married because you're not divorced. And technically, you live with them. So you can be like, what do you mean? I live. But no one who knows your situation would say this is a good marriage. You know, we always talk about God hates divorce. But I asked on a video earlier, well, when does he hate divorce? Is it Legal or functional? Because most people are functionally divorced long before they're legally divorced. So is God okay with as long as you don't get a legal separation? Of course not, because you're not loving the Lord, loving your wife as Christ of the church. She's not submitting. Whatever the dynamics are, God isn't pleased by that. But you're still present, you're still attending, but it doesn't mean that you're not affirming that you love your spouse. Your actions, no, it's not how it works. So I'm not saying that we should be like, okay, let's go to a gay wedding. What I'm saying is, particularly if you, Allen Parr, and other Christian influencers who have a bigger platform, be careful what you say, fam, because you're not rooting it directly in scripture. We got to take as best as we can our perspectives as best as we can from scripture. Yes, you quoted Ephesians 5:11, which I love that verse, but that verse, you added language to it that makes it seem like that's not what it's saying, all right? But let me give you my third biblical example, because I want to be biblical on what I say. And this is the point that I'm trying to make. This is the point I'm trying to make here. Attendance doesn't always mean approval or acceptance, all right? It does not always mean approval or acceptance, all right? Let me prove this biblically speaking. Let me prove this point biblically speaking. Let's go to the tape, all right? Let's go to the tape. Let's go to here, right? Here we are. This is Matthew chapter 9, all right? This is Matthew 9, and my point is attendance doesn't always mean approval or acceptance, all right? I try to be biblical as best as I can. You could disagree with me, but disagree with me from the Bible, not how it makes you feel. Because I'm not saying we should go to gay. What I'm saying is, do not say that if you go, you're attending or approving. That's dangerous. And do not say a guy is affirming gay marriage when you say later on in your video with text that he's not. Don't you got too many followers, Alan Parr, to be clickbaiting us. People look to you, fam. Be biblical as best as possible. All right, so here's my point of what I'm saying. Attendance doesn't always mean approval. Watch this. Beginning in verse 9. As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. And as Jesus reclined at table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." Okay, let's process what's happening here, all right? Let's process what's happening here. I could be wrong. Here, Jesus is at Matthew's house. Matthew's a tax collector. He gets saved. Now, many of you know this, but in Jesus' day, if you associated with a tax collector, they affirmed that you support them. There was nothing. They assumed you're with the tax collectors, they would hate you, right? So Jesus calls Matthew, of all people, a tax collector, right? To be saved. Matthew then has a party for Jesus, and the scripture tells us that he was reclining at the table. Jesus was chilling. Boom. Lean back. The gangsters don't dance. They do the rocker where they lean back. Jesus is leaning back, reclining at the table. With tax collectors and sinners, right? Jesus is with them, him and his disciples. The Pharisees show up, and listen to what they say. "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Notice they didn't say, why is he teaching them anything? Jesus was not teaching them. He was chilling with them, eating with tax collectors and sinners, right? If his attendance means approval, then Jesus is approving of tax collectors and sinners, and we cannot follow him and his disciples. Jesus is not there. His attendance does not mean approval, right? It does not. Jesus is there eating, not teaching, eating with tax collectors and sinners, chilling. Now notice who has a problem with it. Who has a problem with it? The Pharisees. I'm not calling Allen Parr a Pharisee. I'm saying in this story, this is the reality. The Pharisees have a problem with you being in close proximity to tax collectors and sinners. You being in attendance, you're eating with them. So they ask the question, why is he eating with them? You know why? Because the Pharisees would never do that. That goes against, in their mind, the law, because they're Gentile, they're sinners, they're unclean. We can't be around them. And listen to what Jesus says. He says this: those who have need of a physician, let me go back. But when he heard it, he said, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. He's mocking them a little bit because they're in the need of a physician. But he's saying people who think they're good, then they don't need no help. They don't need to do nothing different. He said, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Now, in this context, sacrifice is equivalent to theology, right? Because sacrifices were what the Jews did to appease their sins, right? You give sacrifice to the Lord. This was the law of Moses, right? This was all Leviticus language. So he's saying, I desire character over theology. I desire mercy, having mercy upon people rather than being so theologically astute. This is what Jesus is saying. And he said, go and learn what this means. Here's my problem with Brother Allen Parr. I think he's a godly dude. I don't know him. Here's my problem with him and all these other Smart Channel Christian and everybody else. I think in premise form, they're right. I don't disagree. I'm not going to 99.99% of gay transgender weddings. I'm just not doing it. I do photography. I ain't shooting your wedding, fam. But let me tell you this. God forbid for me, but if one of my sons, if that happened to one of my sons, I cannot guarantee that I would not go to their wedding. Yes, because I love them. And it's not because I love them more than God. They would know I do not approve. And I know everybody in that room would know I do not approve. And every time they saw me, they would know that I think this is sinful. I am exposing this by my mere presence. I'm not celebrating. I'm not smiling. And the tears that I'm probably shedding, this is big for me. If you don't have to agree with this, if you're good with that, this would not be my desire for my children, because I believe the Bible says that this is a sinful lifestyle and this could lend them eternity away from God. That would bother me. If that bothers you, I'm sorry. Everybody's free to their own opinion. We used to say it's a free country. Now it costs your character. This is where I'm at. I ain't going for it. So if it was my son, I would be heartbroken. I'd be heartbroken. I would love him. I'm going to love him. And if I'm there, he's going to know I'm there because I love him. And every time he sees me, he's going to know it's not true. But my attending is not approval, because the Lord knows that my righteous soul is tormented watching this happen. But I'm there because I know my relationship with my child is deeper and will last longer than this relationship with this other person. And when this relationship is over, which they have a high divorce rate, like the 80%, when it's over, I want my son to be like my dad was there for me all the time. And even though I knew he didn't want it, that might be the grace that breaks his heart and has him return back. So my point is this: be careful when you make these categorical statements like no Christian should ever. Brother, there's consciences, there's weak and strong consciences. I'm not saying we should go to them, but depending on my relationship, if my relationship with that person is like of that nature of my children, or one of deep evangelical hope and witness, I may. And I'm not saying I would as a rule, I'm saying I may, but I will not, and you should not let Allen Parr or anyone bind your conscience with generalities, because some of these statements are dangerous. Don't get me wrong, in the grand scheme, I agree. But when we get to the nuances, and I'm not disagreeing about promoting or affirming, I'm disagreeing with the fact that attendance means approval. And that by being there, you're not exposing it, but you're affirming, promoting, and praying. Absolutely not. And I think when you use that kind of language, it just becomes dangerous. It becomes dangerous. So I'm not going to watch the rest of the video. You guys can go look that up. Allen Parr is a popular dude. Look it up. I wanted to make a point about this because as a pastor, I have to be very careful when I'm talking to people in my church about the nuances. There's grace in the nuance. Romans 14, we have conscious issues. Right? Paul said one person thinks one day is holy, another thinks every day. So he's talking about the Sabbath. One person thinks the Sabbath should be kept. One person thinks no day should be kept. And he said it must be true for the person, right? It must be true to you. You have to have a conviction that honors the Lord, and that be the case. And I'm going to end with this. This is what Paul said, and I want to show you what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 4, right? I love this. This is kind of my verse as a pastor. This is my go-to verse lately, because I think we live in a world of such judgmentalism that you have people who make these crazy statements that I just don't know if I don't know if you're representing God. Like, we almost forget that Jesus said, I didn't come to condemn the world, but to save it. Now, when he comes back, he's going to condemn the world, but we're out here treating the world like he's here to condemn it. So let's read this real quick. Listen to this, 1 Corinthians 4. I'm going to end with this. This is my pastoral perspective and how I feel. He says this: this is how one should regard us, as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found faithful. But with me, it is a very small thing that I should be judged by you or by any human court. In fact, I do not even judge myself. For I am not aware of anything against myself, but I am not thereby acquitted. It is the Lord who judges me. Therefore, do not pronounce judgment before the time, before the Lord comes, who will bring to light the things now hidden in darkness and will disclose the purposes of the heart. Then each one will receive his commendation from God. All right? I am not getting my commendation, nor do I want a commendation from Allen Parr or anybody else. He says, the Lord will expose the purposes of the heart. He knows why you did what you did. There are going to be times where everyone else thought what you did was so godly and genuine, and he's going to say, that was selfishly ambitious. That was selfishly ambitious. I think that. Now, having said that, I do not agree largely with Allistair Begg, especially you should go and bring a gift. I think bringing a gift is in support. And I don't know what other things Allistair Begg has said, so he may be supporting it. But later on in the video, I want to scrub to this tab. And this is where I thought, man, you should have did this earlier. Later on in the video, he says this about Allistair Begg. So remember, the affirming gay marriage part is all there. Here's what he says later on in the video. All right, this is what he says here. Look at the screen. Look at the words on the screen at the bottom of the video.
My brothers and sisters, this is a very, very warped view of love. Love does not mean that we accept the decisions that other people are making because we love them, right? I want you to think.
All right, I hope you saw this, right? Let's go back. So let's look at this. Right? Let's look at this. I am not suggesting that Pastor Begg affirms homosexuality. He does not, but attending a gay wedding is affirming the union, okay? I get what he's saying, but here's my problem with that. The title of the video does not make you think that. When you hear a pastor affirms gay marriage, you think he affirms homosexuality. To put that as a disclaimer of text in your video, again, I don't know Alan Parr, bro, that's kind of disingenuous to me though. You could have said, like, let me say this to he didn't say it, I watched the whole video. Or maybe I forgot if he did, but he put that as a disclaimer but the title of the video is going to grab you, not the disclaimer 10.5 minutes into the video. You got to be careful, man. You got too many views, Mr. Parr. You got too many subscribers to do that, man. You got to if you don't like, you got to frame it in such a way that it makes sense, but don't do that. Don't do that. Now, I'm not saying Allistair Begg is right. That's for your conscience to decide. And you could disagree with everything I said, but I think, one, you have to be careful because it is possible. It's possible to be righteous in the midst of unrighteousness. We see that in a lot. Two, God judges the heart more than the actions. We see that with David and the verse we just read from 1 Corinthians 4. And three, attendance does not always mean approval. Jesus was at the party chilling, not teaching, not none of it. So again, you could disagree with me on that. If some of you are blown and you unsubscribe, my life will go on. I'll be good. I'm trying to just be as biblical as possible when I think about these things and not just give broad brushing statements of disapproval or approval. If I can make a biblical logic for it that's not taking verses out of context, I want to at least present that as a way to think through it. You guys are free to make up your own choice. 1 Corinthians 4, I'm not judged by you. I don't care if you agree, disagree. If you unsubscribe or subscribe, thank you. My life goes on. I got to stand before God and give an account, and I'm comfortable standing before God saying this is what I think based on what your word says. I think we got to be careful of the broad brushing statements. All right? But again, do you. All right? And I respect that. Right. I'm a Christian, but I judge a lot. I bang with Faith Refined by Fire. I bang with her. She be on point. I bang with her tough. She be on point. All right? But what do I know? I'm just a dude, a pastor, trying to find his way. I don't have to make YouTube videos. All right. Where can I watch this full live? I came in the middle of it. It'll be go to YouTube, go to Kurt Kennedy's Corner, and you'll see all my videos are there. All right? So this is that. Sorry we didn't give y'all a cross-exam tonight, but it is what it is. I like Alistair, but I think he was wrong. I believe I agree. I think Alan is correct too in 99% of what he said. And my pushback is against the nuance and some of the categorical statements that I think you got to be very careful of. All right? Having said that, I'm Kurt Kennedy. I will see y'all tomorrow. We're going to come back to that David story because I got a word that I think may be helpful, particularly for those of us who wallow in shame. I think shame is a scheme of the devil in a way that may make sense to you. All right? So I'll see you tomorrow in this video. Thanks for watching, subscribing. Thanks for the love.